Imagine a single family controlling an empire so staggeringly massive that its market value equals roughly 5 to 6% of their entire nation's GDP. And we aren't talking about a tiny island nation here. We are talking about India, a powerhouse with over 1.4 billion people. This family operates the largest oil refinery on the planet. They run the biggest retail chain in the country. They control a telecom network with over 500 million subscribers. Every single time an Indian citizen makes a phone call, streams a movie, buys a shirt, or fills up their car with gas, a fraction of a cent flows directly into this family's pockets. They didn't just build a successful company. They quietly built the invisible operating system that runs the fastest-growing major economy on Earth. I'm Daniel, and welcome to Asian Money Map. On this channel, we don't just look at stock prices. We try to decode the hidden mechanics, the power plays, and the actual strategies behind Asia's biggest financial empires. I'm fascinated by how wealth moves in the East. And if you want to understand who really pulls the strings, stick around. Let's dive in. To really understand how the Ambani family achieved this level of dominance, we have to go back to the late 1950s. And to be completely honest with you guys, when I first started researching this, I assumed it was just another generic story of old money and inherited wealth. I was wrong. The patriarch Dhirubhai Ambani was not born into high society. He actually spent his early years working as a gas station attendant and a clerk in Yemen. When he returned to India, he had a grand total of about $150 and a massive ambition. He rented a tiny 350-square-foot office in Mumbai and started the Reliance Commercial Corporation, trading spices and synthetic yarn. But Dhirubhai saw a fundamental flaw in how business was done in India at the time. Back then, India was operating under what was called the License Raj. It was an intensely bureaucratic system where you needed government approval for absolutely everything. Establishing a new factory was a nightmare, and getting capital from the traditional old money banks was nearly impossible for an outsider. So Dhirubhai did something revolutionary for the Indian market. He bypassed the banks completely. He went straight to the working and middle class. He convinced thousands of ordinary shopkeepers, farmers, and teachers to invest their life savings directly into his textile business. When Reliance went public in 1977, it birthed the equity cult in India. The company had so many retail investors that they literally had to hold their annual general meetings in football stadiums because no boardroom or hall could fit them. Once he had the capital, Dhirubhai executed a strategy called backward integration, and the logic here is honestly brilliant. He was making synthetic textiles, but to make textiles, you need polyester. So instead of buying polyester from a supplier, Reliance just built a plant to manufacture it. But then, to make polyester, you need petrochemicals. So they built petrochemical plants. And to get petrochemicals, you need crude oil. So, in the late 1990s, Reliance built the Jamnagar refinery. Today, it is the largest, most complex single-site oil refinery in the world, processing well over 1 million barrels a day. By owning every single step of the supply chain, Dhirubhai made Reliance virtually untouchable. By the time he passed away in 2002, he had built an absolute titan of industry. But there was one major problem. He didn't leave a will. What followed was one of the most intense and public family feuds in corporate history. The two heirs, Mukesh and Anil Ambani, went to war for control of the empire. They were complete opposites. Mukesh was the older, introverted, highly analytical operations guy who practically lived at the refineries. Anil was the charismatic, flashy younger brother who loved the media, charmed the politicians, and hung out with Bollywood stars. The infighting got so toxic that it began to threaten the stability of the entire Indian stock market. Finally, in 2005, their mother stepped in and forced a settlement. She sliced the empire right down the middle. Mukesh was handed the old economy businesses, the oil refining and petrochemicals. Anil got the new economy businesses, telecommunications, financial services, and power generation. Now, at the time, a lot of analysts thought Anil walked away with the absolute steal of the century. Oil was seen as a dirty legacy business, while telecom and finance were the undeniable future. For a brief period, Anil's net worth actually surpassed Mukesh's. But here is my analysis on why that narrative flipped so violently. It comes down to capital discipline. Anil took on a staggering amount of debt to expand his businesses as fast as possible. He wanted growth at any cost. Mukesh, on the other hand, sat quietly on his cash cow oil refineries. He used that immense steady cash flow to build an absolute fortress of a balance sheet. Mukesh knew that whoever controlled data would control the 21st century in India. The only thing stopping him was a non-compete clause he had signed with his brother, preventing him from entering the telecom space. But in 2010, that clause expired, and Mukesh quietly began working on a massive project that would completely alter the trajectory of the nation. September 5th, 2016. If you follow emerging markets, this is a day you should remember. This was the day the Indian telecom industry turned into an absolute bloodbath. Mukesh Ambani launched Reliance Jio. For years, he had been quietly spending billions of dollars laying state-of-the-art 4G fiber optic cables across the entire country. But having a superior network isn't enough to pry customers away from entrenched giants like Airtel or Vodafone. You have to give them an offer they cannot possibly refuse. And Mukesh didn't just undercut the competition. He financially suffocated them. Jio launched with an offer that sounded like a scam because it was so good. Free voice calls for life! And completely free 4G data for the first 6 months. The public response was unbelievable. People queued for blocks just to get a Jio SIM card, while competitors were charging premium, painful rates for a single gigabyte of 3G data. Jio was handing out gigabytes of blazing fast 4G every single day, for free. The telecom sector went into total shock. Established companies went bankrupt, scrambled into desperate mergers, or simply packed up and left India altogether. And, in a wild twist of fate, Anil Ambani's telecom company, Reliance Communications, ultimately collapsed under a mountain of debt and filed for bankruptcy. Mukesh had systematically beaten his own brother at the exact game Anil was supposed to dominate. When Jio finally did start charging for data, the prices were rock bottom. Mukesh's core strategy was to treat data like oxygen. Make it so cheap and so ubiquitous that people can't live without it. Before Jio, India ranked 155th in the world for mobile broadband consumption. Within a matter of a few years, it shot to number 1. Today, Jio has well over 500 million subscribers. They essentially digitized a nation of 1 billion people overnight. But this is where my opinion on the matter really solidifies. I don't think Mukesh Ambani ever just wanted to be a telecom provider. That's thinking too small. Jio was a Trojan Horse. Once you control the internet access of 500 million people, you don't just sell them data. You build a walled garden, an ecosystem they never have to leave. Think about a typical day for a modern consumer in India. You wake up and check WhatsApp on a Jio smartphone, running on the Jio 5G network. You watch a cricket match on Jio Cinema. You take your family shopping at Reliance Trends. You order your groceries through JioMart. If you own a vehicle, you fill it up at a Jio BP gas station. Reliance Retail has quietly grown into the undisputed king of Indian commerce. And they did it by outsmarting Western models. If you look at Amazon, their model relies on massive, centralized warehouses. But India's geography and infrastructure are incredibly complex and chaotic. So instead of fighting that, Reliance partnered with millions of small, local neighborhood shops, known as Kiranas. They turned these mom-and-pop stores into micro-delivery hubs, all powered by Reliance's back-end supply chain. It is a brilliant localization of e-commerce. And what about that legacy oil business? The cash cow that funded all of this? The Ambani family is acutely aware that the global economy is transitioning away from fossil fuels. So, they are currently executing a pivot so massive it's hard to wrap your head around. They have pledged an astonishing $80 billion to build a gigawatt-scale integrated clean energy ecosystem. They are literally constructing one of the world's largest green energy hubs right next door to their legacy oil refinery in Jamnagar. As we look at the numbers for the last few years leading up to 2026, Reliance Industries is pulling in gross revenues well over $120 billion, which brings me to my final takeaway. How does a government allow one single entity to control this much of the pie? Is it a dangerous monopoly, or is it a necessary engine for a developing nation? In my opinion, The reality of emerging markets is that complexity is the ultimate economic moat. India is incredibly fragmented. You have different states, dozens of languages, complex tax codes, and intense political bureaucracy. Western giants like Amazon, Walmart, Meta, and Google have unlimited cash, but they constantly struggle to navigate the political labyrinth of India. The Ambanis don't just navigate the labyrinth. They are the labyrinth. They understand the nuances of Indian regulation better than anyone on earth. They have positioned themselves as the unavoidable gatekeeper to a billion consumers. When Meta and Google realized how hard it was to win India on their own, they didn't try to fight Reliance. They practically surrendered and invested billions directly into geo platforms. If you want to do business in India at scale, you inevitably have to pay a toll to the Ambani family. From a gas station clerk in Yemen to an empire that literally dictates the economic pulse of over a billion people. The Ambanis didn't just build a business in India. They engineered a reality where India's growth is fundamentally tied to Reliance's growth. So, I want to throw this question over to you guys. When you look at the global landscape, which family or conglomerate do you think has a tighter, more unbreakable grip on their country's economy than the Ambanis? Are we talking about the chaebols like Samsung in South Korea? Or maybe the massive Keiretsu groups in Japan? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to see how you think India's ultimate monopoly stacks up against the rest of the world. And if you enjoyed figuring out the mechanics of this empire with me, and want to keep mapping out the hidden power structures of Asia, hit that subscribe button. It helps me keep bringing you these deep dives every single week. Because in the East, power isn't always loud, it's structural. See you on the next map.